Ladies and gentlemen, it's been a while since we've had an insider episode. Life comes at you fast sometimes, but I'm glad to say that we are back. Well, at least I'm back. Unfortunately, JR is feeling a little bit under the weather, but we have a very well, you're not a new guest, but you have a new role now.
New
You have
job.
been new job, new title as we've got Tim Lowry filling in for JR this week. Tim is now the GM of the Arizona Diamondbacks, taking over for Aaron Silence, one of the longest running members of our community, and we will definitely miss Aaron. But
Aaron.
Tim's got some big shoes to fill in that regard. But Tim. You've been on our podcast before, representing your community creative player Ed Brown, and now you've got a completely different role. How does that feel?
Some days I wake up and I feel like, yeah, okay, I like this. And other days I'm like, what did I do?
Well, one of those
uh,
days was probably the day you got the message that the Arizona Diamondbacks were mathematically eliminated from the playoff race.
oh yeah, oh
Yeah,
yeah,
I mean, that
yeah.
wasn't
And that
anything to
wasn't a
do.
surprise
No,
either.
no,
And I
they,
have to say,
yeah,
Jr., I hope you feel better.
yes,
I,
absolutely.
I won't have the calm, well thought out wisdom that he has, but there's one thing I can do just as good as Jr. And that is freezing his
Yes,
frame.
for those of you that don't know what he's referring to, that is a Joe's on the Pros joke where we always mess with Aiden for his messed up connection sometimes, and Jr. does the fake freeze really well.
Yes, he does. He does. Get well
But
soon, my friend.
yes, and this is literally a last second thing. So thank you, Tim, for stepping up and being able to join us. So what are the just kind of getting a little bit, because we always grill the new guys. What are
Hmm.
some of the things you've had to adjust mentally as you move from this role of trying to create the story for your CCP Ed Brown over in the White Sox system? Now you kind of have to build two stories, one as your GM of the Diamondbacks and also continuing on your story of your CCP.
Yeah, it is two very different worlds, and it's kind of why I was very hesitant to sign up for an AL because it
Ha.
was just
Yeah.
too close and too. Yeah, it was too much.
You didn't want to have to deal with Ed Brown.
No, no. Um, it's been a very unique challenge for me because I've played OOTP since OOTP 2,
Oh wow.
but it's been a while since I've done the franchise mode this deeply, and the first online league I've ever been a part of. So
Wow.
it's been exciting and
That's crazy.
terrifying all at the same time.
I'm still very new to OOTP. I literally bought OOTP to join eMLB because I had found commission streams and was really interested in it. He was the one that got me in out of the park. So I'm still fairly new to here. You've been there since OOTP 2. You've
Yeah.
got a lot of experience. So well, we might be seeing the Diamondbacks coming back to glory soon because they were recently World Series champions a few seasons
Mhm.
ago. Just kind of lost a little bit of that talent that got them there. So it'll be interesting to see how you turn the Diamondbacks franchise around, especially in a division starting next year that's going to be extremely competitive. When we talk about adding the expansion team, is also we're going to be doing a league restructure where we're going from three divisions in each league down to two, and the National League West next year is going to consist of the current National League West, but adding in what are currently the top three teams in the NL Central in Chicago, St. Louis, and Milwaukee. So not only is the NL West have the two best records in the National League right now with the Padres and the Giants, you also add the top three teams from the other Central Division. So
Oh, great.
you got your work cut out for you there.
Well, thankfully, Aaron did a very good job of building up the team, and not just on the major league level, but also at the farm system.
Mm.
It's a deep team. I get the thought process behind it. Some things I agree with, some things I want to switch, but yeah, it's going to be interesting. I mean, it's all going to come down to execution and making the right moves.
All right,
So,
we're definitely looking forward to seeing what you can do with Arizona as the years go on. But why don't we go to the meat of our discussion today? And that is, where is everyone currently, and how does this stack up moving towards playoff time? We are currently in smack dab in the middle of September. The playoff push is on, and let's take a look at where everyone is in terms of the standings, as we have about, what, say 20 more games left, I'd
Hmm.
say, somewhere around there.
Yeah, 17 to 20, depending on who you are.
That's right. And so starting out in the AL East, Baltimore is holding off the Boston Red Sox with a 3-game lead there. The White Sox and Indians are locked in a battle, game and a half apart from each other for the AL Central, and that's going to be same thing as last year, a battle to watch, because last year it was the Tigers and the Royals, and everyone knew that the loser of the division race wasn't going to make the playoffs because they were too far out of the wild card race. It's looking like it's going to
Same thing.
do that again, but with two completely different teams this
Yeah.
time.
Yeah, really.
So that is going to be an interesting race to watch. And then actually all 3 divisions here are going to be interesting to watch, because then we have the Astros and the Angels 3 games apart from each other, sporting 2 of the top Astros are tied for the top record in baseball. The Angels have the 4th best record in baseball, but they're only 3 games apart from each other. And then right now in the wild card, because the Angels have the 4th best record in baseball, they have a comfortable wild card lead, 9 up on their division rival Mariners, who are holding a 2-game lead over Boston and a 6-game to 7.5-game lead over the Indians and Rays. Over on the National League, the Phillies are kind of running away with this division now that they have, number one, they now have a positive run differential for the first time since the first episode that we've talked about it.
Mm-hmm.
And not only that, they are the only team in the division above 500, as injuries to the Nationals have kind of derailed their season. They're now under 500. And then the Mets and the Marlins are already mathematically eliminated. And then NL Central, the Cubs are one of the teams. They are the team tied with the Astros for the best record in baseball. Have a comfortable 13-game lead over the Cardinals, 17 over the Brewers. They're cruising to an NL Central title at this point. There's no question about that. NL West, you have the Padres, who are only a half game back of the best record in baseball, but they are followed closely by the Giants at 5.5. There's still a little bit of a race to be had there, but the Padres could really close the door there coming soon. But the Giants do have a comfortable 7-game lead as the top wildcard spot over the Cardinals, who have the second wildcard spot. Dodgers only 1 game back from there. Brewers 4 games back. So what we want to do is we're going to look at the OOTP version of Pennant Chase. We're going to go division by division and wildcard race by wildcard race, talk about what how the standings are currently and what we think might happen with each of these division races. And we'll start with the AL East. So currently, Baltimore has a 3-game lead over Boston. They both have 19 games left to play, although Baltimore plays the majority of theirs away. They have about the same record in terms of their opponents at 48% for each of them. And then technically the Rays are still hanging in there, but at 8.5 back, they have a 0.1% chance of making the playoffs with their new GM Aiden. They've definitely turned things around since Aiden has taken over, and that just is an attribute to the involvement of the GM, because as we learned, unfortunately, Charles was unable to keep up with his Rays and ended up having to step down. Aiden took over, was an active GM, and has turned their season around, got them back over 500. But at this point, it's a 2-team race at this point.
Yeah, Tampa has to come too far and doesn't have enough runway to get it done, I don't think. That's the thing there. And plus, the nice thing about the end of the year is that it's always in the division, so the teams are really playing against each other, and there's 3 big games at Baltimore towards the end of the season. It seems like for the last couple of months, the standings have been the same. Baltimore is up, Boston's 2-3 back, and it's just, Boston will make a move. A couple days later, Baltimore will, get that lead back. And I think that's basically how it's going to end, barring any, major injuries or anything like that.
Yeah, if you look at the record graph over
Yeah.
here on the right-hand side, that's exactly what you've been saying. They've pretty much been staying. Both teams have pretty much been staying steady since the All-Star break, and Boston isn't doing enough to take over the lead, but Baltimore isn't doing anything to extend its lead. They're both kind of staying at the same level right now. So which team will go on a run is a question, because Boston could easily string together a bunch of wins in a row and overtake the division. This is still wide open.
Yeah, that final
So
series is gonna be a big difference. I think.
do they play the last series of the year against each other?
I don't know if it's the last, but they're at Baltimore. Oh, okay,
They're
no, it's
at
some of the
Baltimore
place.
in a couple weeks, and then no, that's the only time they play
Ooh,
each other. It's a 3 game series
yeah, but
in the middle
Baltimore's
of the
got to
last
finish up
games.
against Tampa. Okay,
Baltimore has actually one, two, three, four, 7
7.
games out of their last 9 against Tampa. So Tampa
Well, we're going
is
to be
in
hearing
this.
about that on the other podcast.
Oh yeah, here's why you're wrong. Is going to have some fun as Aiden could play spoiler to Brendan's season
Yeah.
because it is very possible that the team that doesn't make it out of the or AL East, it's possible that that team doesn't make the playoffs because you have an and we'll get to the AL West, but AL West has 3 strong teams right now, and you could have both of the wild card come out of the NL West. We'll get to that in a minute.
Oh yeah.
You have any predictions as to how this is going to end up?
I think Baltimore holds off Boston. Boston has had a great year. They just, if they had any pitching, any defense, I think it would be a little bit tougher for
Mm-hmm.
Baltimore. But Boston's fairly one dimensional, and they've been that all season. And I think that's going to be enough to give it to Baltimore.
I would probably agree, though. I will say, as much as as we have talked about Houston's offense for most of the year, Boston has actually taken over the top spot in most of the offensive
Hmm.
categories at this point, as Houston has kind of cooled off a little. Excuse
Yeah.
me, cooled off a little bit. But as you mentioned, their pitching and their defense have a lot to be desired, and you need to be a more balanced team if you're going to make a push for the playoffs. Now, they still could end up as a wild card team, and we'll talk about the wild card race in a minute. But in terms of division, I think I'll agree with you. I think Baltimore is going to be able to hold them off because they are a more well balanced team, even if they don't have as high powered of offense.
Yeah.
All right, so probably the most interesting division race is the one between the White Sox and the Indians. The Tigers and Twins are still listed here because they're still mathematically in it, but they both have 0.1% chance of making the playoffs. So we'll just talk about the White Sox and Indians. Both White Sox have 20 games left. The Indians have 19 left. And kind of like Baltimore, the White Sox have more away games than home, and Cleveland has more home than away. How many? Let's see how often they play. Do they play each other a bunch down the stretch?
Oh.
So actually, the White Sox just took 3 out of 4 this past week,
Hmm.
this past sim. So that was a huge lift for them to take over that lead. They end the season against each other in Cleveland. That'll be
Sounds like
fun
a
to
game of the
watch.
night coming up.
But here's some bad news for the White Sox. Do you see some people on their schedule that might give them trouble?
Yeah.
I see both of the leaders in the AL
Mhm.
West on their schedule
And
in the
Detroit's
last
been on
part of the
fire
season.
lately.
Detroit's been playing better,
So
yeah.
it's not going to be easy for Chicago. I'll
No, it
say
is
that.
not. It is not. Let's see. Let's
Fortunately,
see
I
who.
don't have any rooting interest for the White Sox, but yeah, they're
No,
good.
not at all.
No, no. But
Now,
Sadier's done a really good job with that team, and
hmm
Martin Bradford is, my second favorite CCP. Uh, just
rookie of
a
the year
fun,
candidate right there.
yeah, just a phenomenal job, and there's no. It's kind of like Baltimore. There's no one standout thing that they do. They just kind of do everything well,
hmm
and it's hard to run. I mean, like taking 3 out of 4 from the White Sox getting 3 out of 4. I was just kind of surprised because it's really hard to do that against Cleveland.
Absolutely. Now the Indians also will have to face the Angels, but they have another AL West opponent in Seattle instead of Houston, and that could have huge implications because, like we mentioned, Seattle's in the wild card position,
Hmm.
so that's going to be a tough team to beat as well. So both of these teams are going to face some tough competition down the stretch, and it's who's going to make it out of the gauntlet between the two. They're only a game and a half apart from each other right now. So
Yeah,
this is
and
going
the
to
Twins
be
and
really fun to
KC aren't
watch.
just going to lay down either.
Oh no,
I
absolutely
mean,
not.
Minerva and GT, they're in it for the long haul, and they'll have something to say
Oh,
about how this race ends up.
can we talk about the Twins real quick?
Sure.
we were we were singing the Twins' praises a couple of podcasts ago. In fact, it was probably the last podcast that JR and I had a chance to record. We were talking about the Twins leading this. We actually no, it was because that was the episode that we interviewed GTs because
Mm-hmm.
they were leading the American League Central at that point. Man, it's been a while since we recorded. My goodness, sorry guys.
It's the
Just
curse of
realizing
the
how long it's
insider
been.
podcast. That's what it
Oh
is.
my, oh god, don't put that on us. Is having you on counteracting the curse? Is that helping us?
I'll let you know. See how the Diamondbacks finish up.
Fair enough. Um, but yeah, the Twins were leading for most of the season, and they kind of. It's amazing how much this season that the AL Central is kind of repeating what happened last year,
Mm-hmm.
as opposed to you have two teams that are fighting for each other in the AL Central, trying to take that top spot for the division, knowing that the other team is probably not going to win a wild card spot, and then you had a team that was leading the division have a fall off a cliff. Last year it was the Tigers who ended up losing the division at the very end of the season, but this year it was the Twins who had a huge fall at the about around the All-Star break, as you can see around for this graph
Mm-hmm.
right here. Huge drop as they had a comfortable lead early on in this season around I think that's a June time frame, and then all of a sudden they just fell off a cliff. So AL Central, back-to-back seasons, a division leader falling off a cliff, and two teams battling at the end who one of them is not going to make the playoffs and making a really good division race. So it's just weird that it was different teams every time, because this year we're not even talking about Detroit and Kansas City. They're at the near the bottom of the division. Well, Detroit's third in the division.
Yeah, and you
But
make a
like,
good point. I mean, the whole division is so balanced that they could all play against each other for 30 games, and it would all end up within about 3-4 games of each other. I really
yeah,
feel.
like you said, Kansas City and Detroit aren't going to roll over for Cleveland or Chicago as they fight for the division championship. They're going to give them everything they got. There are some teams that love to play the role of spoiler, and the AL Central, as we keep saying as the trademark, the most competitive division in baseball. It may
Mm-hmm.
not be the best division in baseball, but they are competitive, as you can see by the fact that the two teams in the lead right now were not the teams in the lead for the division last year. It's kind of flipped itself on its head. Like literally the Royals went from best to worst in this division.
Mm-hmm.
And it's very exciting because it's just someone new all the every year so far. And we'll see what happens next year, because who knows, because these teams are now going to be split.
Yeah,
They're not
they're
going to be in the
going to be
same division anymore. So we'll have to see how they compete in their respective divisions, because let's see if I remember correctly. I think going
east.
Chicago and Cleveland and Detroit are going east. Minnesota and Kansas City going west.
Right.
Oh
Along
wow.
with
What look
Portland.
at that. The top 3 teams are going to the same division again.
Mm-hmm.
That was not intentional, everybody.
Yeah.
Um so we'll have to see how those teams do in their new divisions next year. But this one's a lot harder to predict than the East. What do you think is going to happen here in the Central?
I'm going the straight homer pick. I'm going
Gee,
White Sox.
yeah, I wonder why. It might not be
But
because of a certain third baseman over in Chicago. I don't know.
that's some of it. But early on in the year, the White Sox, after the seventh inning, it was just chaos.
Hmm.
They fixed their bullpen issues. Um, Hedges made some really good adjustments there. Um, Tim Anderson has finally arrived, actually showed up, and is starting to perform well. They are the best defensive team in the American League. Um, and the starting pitching has just been phenomenal all year. And I think they've got just enough and one other thing, it seems like it's a different guy every night
Hmm.
with the big hit, or the big shutout inning or something like that. And even though they lost Rutschman for the rest of the season, there's some depth there at catcher, and I think that is enough there to keep them above water.
Yeah, and I just want to point out that it is very impressive that they have the second fewest runs allowed in the American League this year.
In that
They're
ballpark, yeah.
in that ballpark. That's the point I was going to make. They play in a hitter's ballpark, and so you got to give Hedges credit. He built a pitching staff that is able to keep up with his home ballpark. And I always want to point out Nate Lewis
Yes.
Not really someone that we were talking about at all this season. He has put together a solid season. He's hit 44 home runs in the middle of that lineup, hitting right behind Ed Brown,
Hmm.
and a slugging percentage of 595 for an OPS of over 900. That is pretty darn good in the middle of that lineup. Now, it's not going to be a lineup that offensively can contend with Boston or Houston, but you couple it with the pitching that Boston definitely doesn't have, and you have a strong contender for the finishing out the AL Central on top. I'm actually, on the other hand, though, I'm going to predict that the Indians will take the Central. They are led by potential Rookie of the Year candidate Martin Bradford at the top of their rotation.
Hey, Extreme.
Hey, Extreme. They also have a pitching staff that is definitely nothing to sneeze at. Top 5 pitching staff in the American League. Uh, well, in terms of bullpen ERA and FIP, their starter ERA is a little bit on the low side, so they could try to sort things up there. It's not Bradford's fault, but they also have a pretty decent offense as well. So it's interesting. Both of these teams are fairly balanced. It's one of those like jack of all trades, master of none, except Chicago's probably close to mastering the pitching part of it. But I think the impact that Aaron Judge has been having this season has been something that they definitely have been uh, has helped them, and the signing him to an extension as well is going to keep him around for a while. The re-rate definitely worked here. He's got
Definitely.
39 home runs. He's got an OPS of 895, leading the middle of that Cleveland lineup. I just think that, and also trading for Forrest Hightower at catcher, I think helped them out a lot
Oh,
as
that was
well.
huge.
Grabbing
Yeah.
him over from Pittsburgh, that was huge for them. He's hitting pretty well above average right now. He's not the best defensively at catcher right now. He's still, as you can see, he's still learning the role at catcher,
Hmm.
in terms of the OSA ratings anyway. But he's definitely been a help in that lineup. And then John Cotton also coming over from Pittsburgh. He's I think he's still growing, but he's definitely had a positive impact in terms of um, uh, OPS plus and wins created plus,
Hmm.
or WRC plus. So it's definitely going to be close. I am not saying that I am 100% confident in the Indians taking the Central. This is going to be a really fun race to watch, and it's going to be very competitive because we know more than likely that neither of these teams are going to hit a wild card spot. So they are fighting for their playoff lives here. And not only that, if they win the division, they automatically they don't have to worry about a one game playoff. So that's always
Yeah,
something to fight for.
that is that is huge. Yeah, and I would not be sad to see either of these teams in the playoffs. That's
Absolutely.
yeah, they're a lot of fun to watch.
It will be a well earned division title for sure.
Yes, absolutely.
All right, now let's talk about
Speaking of,
the big guys. Let's talk about the big guys. Over in the American League West, we have the Astros tied for the best record in baseball. The Angels have already locked up a 100% chance to make the playoffs with the lead that they have in the wild card, but they are still trying to get that AL West. This is, again, talking about comparisons to last year. This was the Angels and the Texas Rangers last year, where they literally ended the season tied, had to play a game 163 to determine who moved on and had the division win and who had to play in the wild card game. Texas still was able to win the wild card game as they didn't end up getting the division as they beat Boston last year. But this is shaping up to be something very similar. I would not be surprised if we have a repeat and have another game 163 to decide the AL West again.
it definitely wouldn't be a surprise. These are two amazing teams. The season series, I mean, they play each other 6 more times the rest of the way.
That's that's
That's
huge.
going to mean a lot. Because I was looking at the winning percentage of the teams remaining, and I'm like, wow, that's high. And it's like, oh, because they're playing each other. Okay,
Yeah,
got it.
yeah. When 12 of the remaining 19 game, or you said, did you say 12 or six?
Six,
You said
six.
six. When six of that's a third of the games pretty
Yeah,
much left against each other. I'm saying this right now. We need to get these games on Game of the Night. So hopefully, uh, Tom and I said Tim is because you're here. Tom and Ben are able to get some Game of the Nights on there because that's going to be some prime time baseball.
now to this point, Houston has taken 9 out of 13 the season series.
All right, so
So,
that's a big
and,
reason why they have a 3 game lead right
I
now.
was getting ready to say, there's your lead right there.
Yep.
So
Give me
it
1 second. Give me 1 second. I need to plug in my headphones.
all right.
I got that beep that they were running out of battery. So,
Gotcha.
okay, continue your point.
No, I was just the reason Houston is ahead is because of that big lead in their season series so far, 9-4. But both of them are just so dominant on both sides of the ball. I mean,
Hmm.
both of these teams are going to end up winning 100 games in my mind
And
easily.
both of these teams made a big trade at the trade deadline,
Yes.
because they knew the other team wasn't going to sit around and do nothing. They
Right.
wanted to make sure that they grabbed this division and not leave it up to a chance in a one-game wild card. Houston went out and grabbed Seiya Suzuki from Colorado, one of the best offensive talents in the game, and the Angels added Jeremy Frank, one of the better left-handed pitchers in the league from my Cardinals.
Hmm.
No, and knowing that Houston has a lot of lefties in their lineup. So Angels were looking to add a lefty there. So they both were like, I need to do something because I know the other team's going to do something to,
And
to,
and
to
both
help
of
the
them
run.
made a move to directly compete with the other, and that's really
Yep.
cool.
They found a move that fit what they figured would be the counter to the other team,
Yeah.
with the Astros adding a dominant right-handed hitter to counter a left-handed pitcher that the Angels thought was going to counter the left-handed heavy Astros lineup. So those last 6 games down the stretch, are they near the end or are they at the beginning?
I think they're in a
They play
little.
right away. They play
Yeah.
right away.
I
I
think,
think
and
we're
then
trying.
they end up right away, and then they end. Oh no, there they are.
No, it's at the
The,
end of the month.
the
So
final weekend.
Houston ends against Boston, which will be interesting for wild card implications.
Yes.
And then who does LA end against? Scrolling. The Angels will probably end against a division opponent fight. Yeah, another wild card implication,
Seattle. Yep.
Seattle.
Not easy for
So
anybody.
no, it is not. So not only do we have exciting races, but these teams are going to be playing against each other down the stretch. It's not going to be all against teams that are out of the playoff race. They're playing each other, and that's going to make some huge implications down the stretch.
Absolutely.
So as we talk about the AL West, we could probably assume that the Mariners are fighting for a wild card spot at this point.
Yeah.
Being 12 games back, but they still have a 76% chance of making the playoffs because they are in a wild card position. So we'll move on. We didn't predict Houston or LA.
I don't see LA being able to overtake them, but I think it goes down to the last game of the season. I don't think it's going to be 163, but I think the Angels win on the last day. And
You
I
think Angels?
Houston,
Houston. Okay.
Sorry,
No, you're good.
I think Houston wins on the last day of the season.
So you think it's going to be a race all the way up until the
Oh,
end?
absolutely.
All right. I'm inclined to agree with you here. Houston has led for pretty much all of the season, except for a small stint in the middle where the Angels took over for a little bit, but then Houston was able to regain the lead. I'm basing this purely off of the midseason addition. I think the addition of Suzuki is making a bigger impact than the addition of Frank. And I think
That's
as
fair.
a result, with Houston making the move that makes a bigger impact, I think that leads them to the division title as opposed to the Angels. Now, we can safely assume that the Angels are going to lock up the top wild card spot because they are currently 9 up on the Mariners. But crazier things have happened. We
Right.
could see the Angels fall from graces and the Mariners take that top spot, or the Red Sox. But we've got technically Cleveland is still in it with six games back in the wild card. Do you think Cleveland or Tampa Bay has a shot here?
This late in the season, it's tough. Not just the number of games behind, but the fact that they would have to have, like Tampa would have to have 3 teams fall apart in front of them.
That's true.
That's very unlikely. Cleveland has 2, a little more likely, but not really. I think it's going to come down to Seattle and Boston towards the end, and I could see those two almost in a playoff for that wild card spot.
So we've already touched on Boston a little bit as it comes to the AL East race. So we know a little bit about what they've got ahead of them. The Mariners have 7 games against Texas, who is one of those teams that has the talent but kind of underperformed this year. So they could really play some spoiler here. They
Hmm.
also play Houston and Cleveland. They get a good 3-game stretch against Oakland to kind of prepare them for their season-ending series against the Angels. So right now, the Mariners have that last spot in the wild card by 2 games over Boston. Do you think Boston has enough in the tank to overtake Seattle? Because they're 3 back of Baltimore, and we said we don't think they could overtake Baltimore. Do you think they have a chance to overtake Seattle?
I really don't, and for the same reasons. Um, Very one-dimensional, and it's you got to figure out how to keep that Seattle lineup at bay, and I don't think they have the pitching to do it. So
Yeah, I'm kind of along the same lines. Seattle has been solid offensively, but not spectacular. They've also been solid pitching wise, but again, not spectacular. But if you're above average in both sides of the ball, that gives you balance in your lineup. It gives you balance in your pitching rotation, and they've been playing pretty well recently. I think because of what you mentioned, though, how Boston is so one dimensional, I think the Mariners are going to be able to hold off on that second wild card spot too. But they're going to have a huge, huge barrier to get through with they're probably playing either the Angels or the Astros in that wild card game. And
yeah,
that's going to be a tall, tall task to get through.
very much
But
so.
but I would say making the playoffs for the Mariners in that division the way it is, that's a successful season in my book, considering they missed the playoffs last year.
One hundred
Getting
percent.
getting into the playoffs this year would definitely be, I would say, a successful season for Hetz over there in Seattle. Now, and if they can pull off an upset in the wild card game, even better, because they
I
know those
know.
teams.
Well, and you've got to think. I mean, for Houston or LA, whoever ends up in that top wild card spot, they've got to be like, "Geez, what do we got to do?" 'Cause, I mean, you have such a great year, and it's winner take all for one game
Yep,
just to move
yep,
on.
yep. So,
Brutal.
again, some very interesting races here in the American League. The only The only thing that is really wrapped up, so to speak, in the American League is the fact that it's either going to be Houston or LA in the top wild card spot. So both of them are making the playoffs in some form or fashion. But all of the other races, all the division races are up for grabs, and that last wild card spot is up for grabs. So there's a lot of fun baseball to watch in the American League. National League, on the other hand, little bit less exciting.
More cut and dry, you say?
Little bit more cut and dry. Um, really, the only race that is going to be interesting, and no disrespect to the National League East or even myself and the Brewers in the NL Central, the East and the Central at this point, you have to say it's pretty much done in terms of who's
Yeah.
winning those divisions. Like the Phillies have an 11 game lead over the Nationals, who aren't even above 500. And then the Cubs have a 13 game lead over myself, the Cardinals. And so you could pretty much say that those divisions are done, even though the Cardinals do play the Cubs. I think you were saying this beforehand, 6 more times, right? Or
7.
7. 7. Oh yeah, 4 games here. 4 game. At least the 4 game series is in St. Louis.
Yeah.
Literally, all of the rest of my games are against NL Central.
Hmm.
I don't play anyone outside of the Central, and I think that helps me. We'll get to that in a minute when we talk about the wild card. But I mean, I have 7 games against Chicago, so I mean, I could technically skew it the other way.
Yeah.
But that's going to be a tall mountain to climb for one
Or
big
they could take
reason.
that last week and get everything set up for their playoff run with their rotation and everything. So
That's true.
you never know.
I mean, at that point, if they're setting things up for the playoffs, that means I didn't do enough to make them scared to lose a division lead at the very end. So, the only the Cubs do play a couple outside of the division. They play the Mets, who are kind of the bottom of the NL East. They play Tampa Bay, who's around 500, but still playing pretty well right now. But other than that, they play 7 against St. Louis and then a few more against Milwaukee and Cincinnati. So you have to think the Cubs have this wrapped up. The Phillies are honestly the surprise of the season for me.
Yes.
Well, actually, the main surprise is the fact that they're the only team in the division above 500. I know the Nationals had a lot of injuries to some of their top players. I think both of the Diggs brothers are
They're out.
injured right now. Jose Anthony missed some time. Those are your top players, and I think that really hurt them in the standings because they are now below 500 for the first time in a long time as I can remember, because the Nationals have always been a playoff team for as long as I can remember in this league, and I've been around since the beginning of the 2.0 universe. Um, so more shocking than the Phillies leading is the fact that the Nationals are under 500, in my opinion.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think for me, it comes down to the Robles leaving in free agency.
Oh,
It was
really?
like
You think
that
it was
was
that big of an impact?
well, yeah, because I mean that was center field was kind of solid. It was done, and it just there's a chemistry thing there. I think that
Hmm.
just has kind of never they never had that. The last year I remember because I only know the last two seasons, like August September, like right around and right after the trade deadline, they'd catch fire and on the way to the World Series, and it was always the offense that kind of stirred the drink. And
Mm-hmm.
you've got Hunter Bishop up,
Yeah,
solid player, but just
I think where they miss Robles is defensively, because
one hundred
Bishop has
percent.
been the main center fielder for the Nationals this year. He's got almost a negative 12 zone rating.
Yeah.
Going from one of the best defensive center fielders to arguably now statistically one of the worst defensive center fielders, I think that had a bigger impact on Washington than they anticipated.
Well, and it puts more pressure on your corner outfielders too, because then
Yep.
they can't just cover just their little piece of the field.
Yeah. So with Washington, they are down near the bottom of the NL in defensive efficiency. Their pitching staff has been one of the worst in the National League. Their hitting still fantastic.
Oh yeah.
Always has been fantastic, but unfortunately, they're not like the Cubs where they had excuse me, where they had enough offense to make up for the pitching, and also the pitching for the Cubs has been better than the Nationals has been. So unfortunately, it results, and you can see here they were kind of hanging around above 500 for a while, but they've also had a quite a bit of a crash since the All Star break. So yeah, I don't think we really need to talk much more about the NL East and the NL Central. Those are pretty much cut and dry. Phillies are going to win the East. Cubs are going to win the Central. Let's talk about the West. This is where all the fun is, and that is the Padres and the Giants have the
Fun for you.
oh next. We're not talking about next year.
No, I'm talking about Arizona.
Oh,
It hasn't
oh,
been
more
very
fun
fun.
for me. Okay.
Right.
Okay. Well, to be fair, you took over right at the trade deadline, so you didn't even have a chance to really evaluate what would make sense trade wise, which
Yeah.
I commend you for not making the move for the sake of making a move when you took over at that time. Yeah, I think it was the smart decision. Just kind of hold pat. It's like I need time to evaluate my team.
Yeah.
Um, well, we'll see what moves you make in the offseason. I'm expecting some trades from you in the offseason. We'll see what happens there. But let's talk about the Padres and the Giants, the first and the third best record in the National League right now. For as good as the Giants have done, they still have a 5.5 game disadvantage to the Padres. Um, in terms of the division, it might be hard for the Giants to make this up.
Hmm. Agreed.
Let's look at
No,
the schedule
100%.
for
They
the
play each other the
Padres.
last 3 games of the year.
Okay, so they end the season against each other,
Hmm.
and Padres pretty much play everyone inside the division with the exception of 2 games against Minnesota. But they could play some spoiler because the Dodgers are fighting for a wild card spot. They could play spoiler to the Dodgers. Let's see what the Giants have left. Giants play the Dodgers 6 times, so they could play wild card spoiler for them there. They play your Arizona 6 times, so they
Hmm.
only play. They're like the Cardinals. They only play their own division for the rest of the way,
Yeah. Yeah.
which
So it's
could work
fairly
in their
even.
advantage.
Yeah. Now, one of the oddities around this year, the Giants have won 11 out of the 16 games they've played so far against the Padres. And I was just, I
Wow.
went back and double checked. I actually went and looked
Okay.
individually on the schedule for that. And it's like, so
11-5 against the Padres? Really?
yes. And I'm like, so how are
Wow.
you 5.5 back? And it is St. Louis has just, especially second half of the year, they have never had that losing 4 out of 5 chunk.
Hmm.
or they've never had that really bad sim where everything just kind of fell apart for them. And
You said for
they
St.
just
Louis or for San Francisco
San Diego
or
for
San Diego? Okay.
San Diego, they just have not had a prolonged slump or gone on a tailspin. They've just been churning out at around 70%, and
I think I
it's just
found
hard to
where the
catch.
difference was right here.
Hmm.
Right here. Where is that? That
Oh
is
yeah.
at that's beginning of August. Let's go. Let's take a look there. Let's look at the what happened to the Giants at the beginning of August. They they got swept by the Cubs and
Hmm.
lost four straight against Washington and Miami. Oof.
Okay.
So the Cubs one makes sense,
Yeah.
but losing four out
And
of
there could have
six
been an
against
injury
Washington
or
and Miami.
yeah. And
That's rough.
the Padres just don't have that.
Yeah,
They've
they
just
don't.
been
They've been
now
consistent all season.
now they may take the last 2 weeks and have their blow up, but I don't think that's likely.
At that point, it's like what you were saying for the Cubs. They kind of just coasting, setting up their rotation for the playoff push or for
Hmm.
the playoff series, and kind of easing their way in. But 5.5 isn't insurmountable. It's
No.
closer than any of the other divisions in the National League. But if San Diego, like you said, doesn't have that drop off, they can pretty much, as long as they keep winning, like every 2 out of 3, like keep winning series, you're fine.
Hmm. Yeah, the Giants definitely need help from somebody
Yes, from
to get
somebody.
there.
And they're gonna have to rely on their own division to do so. But they're also playing their own division. So
Well, yeah, and that helps too. So
so how are you gonna play spoiler, Tim? I'm waiting for it. I want you to play spoiler here.
okay. Well, we'll see. We've got some kids who call Edward Eldrick. Full Metal is up.
All right.
Playing a lot of kids. I went to a 6-man starting rotation, so
Oh, interesting.
I wanted to
Interesting.
see what I have, and at the same time keep some momentum. So we'll get
All
some.
right. But as it stands, we both probably are in agreement that the Padres more than likely end up taking the NL West.
Yes.
Just 5.5 games is hard to overcome, especially when the Padres are half a game back of the best record in baseball, and it's just because they played one more game and has lost that game.
Yeah.
They had the same number of wins as the Cubs and the Astros, but they just have one more loss than they do.
Right.
So
And sets up an incredible wild card matchup for whoever
yes.
the Giants
So
lose.
at this point, the Giants are pretty much in the same scenario as either the Angels or the Astros on the other side, where the Giants are more than likely locking up the top wild card spot in the National League, led by their really strong starting rotation, headlined by Ethan Candela and Jandy Ronson. So the race here is going to be between three teams. It's the Cardinals, Dodgers, and Brewers. Now, the big blow for the Cardinals, as a lot of teams already know, lost their best player, or I lost my best player, Royce Lewis, who was off to a MVP type season at the beginning of the season. He cooled off in July. He kind of fell back to earth a little bit, but he is out with an abdominal tear for 9 to 10 months, which
Yeah.
means not only is he missing the entirety of this season, he's missing the first few months of next season. So that's a huge blow to the Cardinals. Their big trade acquisition of the offseason was looking like a smart move, but then lost it from there. Now, to be fair, the Cardinals haven't laid over and died. We're not like
No.
winning a whole bunch of games, but um we're not like losing a whole bunch. We're kind of staying, like I mentioned at the beginning. We played 8 straight games against both San Diego and San Francisco, the top two teams in the NL West, and we went 4-4 in those 8 games. We split both series 2-2, and then proceeded to win 2 out of 3 against Pittsburgh after we swept a 2-game series against Milwaukee. So we're playing decent even without Royce Lewis right now. It's definitely a hole, but we haven't given up. But the question is, can we hold off the Dodgers, who are currently on a 7-game winning streak? Thanks, Arizona. They've taken 7 straight against Arizona and Colorado, but they also have 6 games against they are the Dodgers. They have 6 games against San Francisco. They also have 3 against the NL East leading Phillies, or 4 against them. So, and then you still have the Brewers are still in play technically. They're 4 games back at St. Louis, although they just, like I said, they just lost 2 straight. They lost a 2-game series against St. Louis. They lost 2 out of 3 against Chicago. This is going to be this is a more of a true 3-team wildcard race for one spot than on the other side. So what are your thoughts on this 3-team race?
The thing that I keep coming back to, it's hard to pick between the 3. The one thing that hurts the Dodgers is the fact that they're playing the NL West the rest of the way. So now, granted, you guys are playing Chicago and each other, but
7 times.
but
that might hurt me.
Yeah, but the buzzsaw that is the Giants and the Padres, and I mean, and yes, we got swept by the Dodgers, but the week before we swept them. So
I missed that one.
It's
Oops.
kind of it's the season highlight for me.
There you go.
It is. They just haven't really been that consistent lately, and I think that is going to be the struggle for them. Whereas I think against the Central, the Cardinals and the Brewers have a chance to get or keep a little bit of distance.
No, I just pulled up the Brewers schedule because I noticed on the listing there that the Brewers have the least difficult strength of schedule for the rest of the way. And you see why is because the next 9 games are against Pittsburgh and Miami, 2 of the bottom teams in the National League. If there's a chance for the Brewers to get into the wild card race, it's now.
Next week.
They need to take advantage of playing these lower teams if they're going to have a chance to overtake the Dodgers and the Cardinals, because they have to overtake both of them in order to make it. This isn't like top 2 wild card, because the Giants are sitting pretty at the top wild card spot.
Right.
They need to take advantage of the games they've got now, or else it might be too little too late as you end the season 4 against Chicago, 3 against the Reds, who can still play spoiler even if they don't have Trey Griffey, and then they end the season against St. Louis. The wild card might come down to this last series between the Cardinals and the Brewers.
It's definitely gonna go a long way, and I think like I was talking before about Tampa struggling to climb that many teams in that short of time. It's that kind of schedule that you can do that against.
Yes.
If you're playing some of the weaker teams in the league, then you've got a chance. But even then, you can't. You almost have to sweep all the series.
Correct, because a 4-game disadvantage is not easy to overcome with. Let's see, the Giants actually only have 17 games left. The Cardinals, Dodgers both have 19, and so do the Brewers. So that's not going to be easy for them to overcome. But if they're going to do it, they need to, let's see, 9 games. They probably need to win 7 out of the 9 in order to put themselves in a position to
get close to the other teams.
And that's assuming that those teams still play around the level they have been playing.
Exactly.
Or they have to have both of them drop off. Now, Cardinals, Dodgers, if we take the Brewers out of it, because we know what the Brewers have to do. They have to win against these bad teams. But are the Cardinals and Dodgers going to do enough to hold those teams off?
I think so.
Okay.
I've got you this much ahead of the Dodgers, and it's only pitching. It's only pitching.
Okay, so you say the Cardinals have better pitching than the Dodgers? Let me look at
and it's not that much better, but it's
no, it's not. Let's see. The Dodgers have given up the 6th least runs in the NL. The Cardinals, 3rd fewest in the National League, and that's and guess what though, Jack Flaherty is returning. Jack Flaherty is about to come back, and I'm kicking myself because I miscalculate. So when Jonathan Loaisiga went out with his injury, it said 9 to 10 months, and so when I saw that, or was it 9 to 10, basically it gave me a range of months instead of like this many months. And the worst case scenario would be he returned after the playoffs were over. So I went ahead and enacted my insurance policy on him, but he's actually projected to come back at the same time as Flaherty now, and so I can't use him.
Oh,
But at least I'm getting Flaherty back. I don't know how I'm going to use him because coming back from a long-term injury, I don't know if I plug him back in the starting rotation right away or if I use him as a bullpen piece. So I'm going to have to be careful with him.
right.
But that could be a factor. Even though my subs essentially have been playing really well, as evidenced by my third fewest runs allowed in the NL. But Flaherty could be an X factor down the stretch. And I'm hoping the offense, like I keep having like some of my guys doing really well offensively and other ones dropping off. Like right now, Benny the Jet is dropping off while my CCP Alexander has been getting hotter. It's just like when one player starts doing well, the other one drops off. I can't get everyone on the same page.
Yeah.
So,
And it's the secret is to minimize those cold streaks, at
mhm.
least their impact, and take advantage of whoever's hot. And yeah, I always pick wrong for that.
Well, let
At
me
least
let me
this year.
show you what happened against the Giants, because you look at the Cardinals and Giants, they are very similar in terms of where their
Mm-hmm.
strengths are, where the Giants and Cardinals are both really good at pitching and mediocre at best at hitting.
Struggle at offense. Yeah.
You look at these scores here: 3-1, 4-2, in extras, 15 innings, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
3-2, 3-2, and that was your 4-game series.
Yeah.
The only once did a team score 4 runs in that series. And that just epitomizes both of the Giants and Cardinals seasons. Really good pitching and struggling to find something offensively.
Oh, 100%. And I was looking back, and I'm just double checking. It seems like to me, like recently, the Giants have had more than their fair share of extra inning games.
They've had a lot. They
Um,
had two of them alone in the Cardinal series, which were funnily enough, the 2 wins that I had against the Giants were both of the extra inning games, and then the 2
mm-hmm.
games that were 9 inning games were the ones the Giants won. So now,
Yeah.
and actually, Sean, the GM of the Giants, pointed this out when we were in stream during the sim. He's like, this is a potential wild card preview where we could see a
Mm-hmm.
very low scoring one game between the Giants and the Cardinals.
I
So,
could see that.
not gonna lie though,
Of course, now it's going to be 10-9.
I mean, hey, look what happened in a wild card game last year against the
Exactly.
Diamondbacks.
Yeah.
My team struggled offensively all year and all of a sudden exploded for 16 runs in a 1-game wild card, and then we used all those runs and couldn't beat San Diego.
Yeah.
But I will say, if that's the case, if it's Cardinals Giants pitching duel, I'm gonna give the edge to the Giants because I have to face one of either Candela or Johnson or Ronson. Sorry, Ronson.
Yeah.
Um, I don't know if my pitching can go toe to toe with that. I mean, we technically did here. We won 2 out of 4, but a 1 game, I'm scared.
Yeah.
I'm
Well,
scared,
I mean, even
and
if you
I
ended
still
up,
have to hold off the Dodgers to even make it to the wild card.
well, and that's the thing. I mean, it's like the Giants have a little bit of cushion in that, they're not going, but then that's a mixed bag too. Because I mean, if you kind of coast towards the end, I've seen it before in OOTP where a team will just kind of never wake up from that, and with
Yeah.
a 1-game playoff, you kind of want to be in midseason form. So
Yeah, although it could be on the other side, the Cardinals or the Dodgers or the Brewers, if they get back into it, could be using their aces at the very end to make sure they
hmm
get that wild card spot, and then have to go with their 2, 3, 4 starter for that one wild card game matched up against again Candela or Ronson.
yeah,
Not gonna like those odds.
no, or even Roxy for that matter, because
That's true.
he's not bad, no slouch either.
Yeah, that's true.
So
I'd say the Giants probably have the best starting pitching rotation in the National League.
yeah,
I don't know what I San Diego is a more balanced team because they
hmm
have better hitting, just slightly less pitching, and I think that makes the Padres a better team overall.
yeah,
But I think the Giants have the scariest rotation in baseball, maybe
yeah.
in
Instant
all of
slump.
baseball.
Yeah, instant slump. I mean,
Yeah.
facing those three, and you're 0 for 12, and you've got icicles all down your lineup.
which is why I am okay with splitting a 4-game series with them at this point of
Yeah,
the season.
take it all day long.
Same thing with the 4-game split with the Padres. I'm like, I'll take those because right now I'm just trying to make sure I don't lose the wild card spot, and that's what
Yeah.
my team's doing right now. And hopefully I can string together some wins against the Reds and the Cubs. So we'll see.
And both of those guys, Candela and Ronson, it's not like they're you're getting the Bill Doran special quality start from them.
No,
It's
they're going complete
com-
game.
complete game, and it's like we got 5 hits. All right, you know,
That's an accomplishment.
yeah,
5 singles spread out through 5 different innings.
scattered. Yeah.
All right. Well, with that, that was a lot of discussion over the playoff races. It's going to be really interesting. Like we said, two races are pretty much wrapped up, and then another spot is going to be either Houston or the Angels. But a lot of great baseball still to be had. You have the NL wild card is going to be a fun race to watch. AL Central, all of the division races in the American League are going to be fun to watch. So hopefully
Yeah.
we'll get some really good games of the night. I think one of those wild card or one of these races is our game of the night tomorrow night.
I think so.
What did he say? Dodgers and what was the other one? Dodgers and the Giants are potential game of the night. I think it's possible because Commission's talking with them, seeing can we get a delay in there? Can we get this in? So it's looking like it'll be the Giants and Dodgers for the game of the night. As we're recording this the day before, you'll probably see this the day of.
Right.
So be some really good baseball to watch. If you are not plugged into the Commission's Twitch channel, link is in the description below. Be sure to follow him because that's where all of the action takes place. We just talk about what's happening, but the actual action takes place on his stream. So make sure that's the center where everything happens. So go ahead and drop a follow on his stream, tune in, maybe even create a community, create a player of your own while you're at it. We'd love to add more people to the universe, as Tim is one of our, I guess, like figureheads of the CCP community, I guess you could call it, kind of bringing everyone together in the CCP that aren't GMs, and it's a really good time.
No matter who you are, you need to do this.
Absolutely.
It is so much fun.
A lot of fun. And you might end up like Tim and start out as a CCP and then end up as a GM. So
you might.
After, I still find it funny. We remember when we were a long time ago, we were like, when's Tim going to become a GM? When's he going to become a GM? And
I know it was like, so much pressure, but it was so good.
You were like, oh, I don't have enough time to spend in this. And then you made a comment about how much time you spent just looking at your own CCP. And we're like, that's more than some of us spend on our team as GMs. Come on.
Yeah. I finally got over my nerves about it. And anybody who's thinking along that line too, it's a really accepting community of guys. There's a lot of fun. It's so much baseball knowledge within the GM crew, and it's been a real treat.
Absolutely. All right.
Oh no.
You weren't gonna get away with this. We still have to have a power rankings even when JR is not here.
Okay.
It is power ranking time with our guest host Tim. Tim, do you want to start out with number 10, or would you like me to start with number 10?
I will start with number 10.
All right. And for those of you that haven't seen this power rankings before, as I stack the teams up, the left side will be mine. The right side will be Tim's.
All right. So number 10 is going to be one of those wild card teams that we talked about. A West team, the Seattle Mariners.
Oh, you have them at 10?
I have them at 10. Yep.
Okay.
Really good team. You know, a few ups and downs. This is a team. I mean, you know, they win the wild card game. You know, they beat the Angels. Who knows? I mean, they might go on a run, but as far as where they are right now, where I see them, I have them at number 10.
All right. So my number 10 team is the team that we keep talking about how they're completely one-dimensional, and that is the Boston Red Sox. And I will go ahead and say that the team that I put the Red Sox in ahead of was the LA Dodgers. That is honestly, they're kind of tied for 10th for me, honestly, but I think the lineup of Boston scares a lot of people, and if they can figure out how to at least limit damage down the stretch, they could make a push for that wild card spot. Again, it was really hard for me to pick between Boston and the Dodgers here. They're kind of 10A, 10B for me.
Hmm.
But I'll give the nod to Boston just because that lineup scares me.
Well, and to be fair, the Mariners and Dodgers were my 10A, 10B as well.
Okay,
So
so
the
we'll just go ahead and
Dodgers
put
are
the Dodgers as our honorary 11th team.
yes, exactly.
There we
And
go.
the one thing about these powerful offensive teams is if they get hot, it doesn't matter what pitching you've got. You've got to figure out how you're going to score 7, 8 runs against them.
That's true.
And in a playoff series, they only have to do it for 3 or 4 times, and
That's
series is
true.
over. So
All right, so I'll move on to my number 9, and I'm going to put my own team here at number 9. Um, I the loss of Royce Lewis really hurts.
yeah,
The fact that we are still hanging on to that second wild card spot is like I was talking with you beforehand. I said if I don't make the playoffs, I'm gonna be okay because I've had to deal
hmm
with the Royce Lewis injury. Didn't have Flaherty for most of the year. Haven't had Loaizica for most of the year. So to be in a wild card position right now is honestly better than I could have hoped for with all of the injuries that I've had. That being said, despite the fact that we have a really good pitching staff, our offense just still hasn't done enough to push us further than we have right now. Our offense is holding us back. It's our defense is stellar. Our pitching has been really good, a lot better than what we should be with the injuries that we've had. But our offense is holding us back, and that's why I couldn't put my team higher than number 9.
yep. Well, and here I thought I was gonna break new ground with that, but I also put the Cardinals at number 9. Um, Kind of the same thing. It's like the pitching and the defense. And even though you struggle offensively, you have enough on the other two sides to kind of make up for it. And kind of where you sit in the overall standings, um, I like what you've done here. And I mean, the biggest stat from this that I was surprised about, you've got a run differential of 83.
Mm-hmm.
And I was
It's pretty darn good.
expecting kind of like 40s or 50s, and I was like, wow, okay. So yeah, there's
And
a
it's
number
not
9
because
team
we
for me.
score a lot; it's because we limit what everyone else is scoring.
Yeah, yeah, it's a constant 3-1, and it's because my team is kind of the same thing where the pitching is the pitching is what's leading the team, and we struggle on offense. And so, watching the out of town scoreboard on streams and things like that, it's a slow death because it's like, can we make these 3 runs hold up
I
kind
it
of thing.
Funny you mentioned that. Literally, this last stream, I was watching the Cardinals go down late, 7-5 against the Pirates, and I was like, "All right, well, we're not going to come." We ended up winning 8-7 on a walk off
Oh,
in the bottom of the
wow.
ninth. So thank goodness for that. But I was watching, I was like, "There's no way we're making up 2 runs in 2 innings."
Yeah. That's
But
kind of
we
where
ended
I'm
up
at.
doing it.
So,
Thank goodness.
yeah.
But all right, who you
All
got at
right.
number 8?
Number 8, I have the Miracle of Philadelphia, the Philadelphia Phillies.
We can't really call them much of a miracle anymore because they do finally have a positive run differential.
This is true. This is true. One of the things to me that really stands out, and again, they are one of these decent pitching, struggle on offense teams, but they have that late inning magic. I've My trademark is Bobby Orr, first offensive closer in eMLB history. I'm going to die on that hill.
Love that story.
But I mean, Andrew Hunter
Hmm.
has become an ace. Haversham has come up and is contributing. It's a This is one of these teams that could potentially become one of these teams of destiny if you believe in that sort of thing,
Hmm.
where they just keep running the table, and they are my number 18 power wise for that.
Yeah, it's scary that you add someone like Dante Haversham, who's a recent boosted player of Hebrew over there.
Hmm.
That's a scary player to add to a division leader this late in the season This team has been at this point without Haversham, and you add someone like Haversham's abilities, that's a scary thing. And I also have the Phillies at number 8, so we're matching in that regard. Um, it's interesting though, because you look at the stats and where they stack in the National League. I just looked through my Cardinals ones as I was talking about my team, and I'm looking through the Phillies. I'm like, the Cardinals are better in pretty much every category here. What's going
Mm,
on? And the Phillies have a better record. I do think it's a product of the NL East, though, because the NL East, as we've mentioned, are all teams under 500. So the Phillies have had the benefit of playing against some lower competition than, say, the teams from the 2 Western divisions. Now, to be fair, the AL West has Oakland. Sorry, Oakland. They'll be better. Just watch.
yeah,
Um, but like you're looking at these, like most of the offensive stats for the Phillies, they are outside the top 10. And the pitching, they have some category, some outside the top 10, some barely in like the top 5. But it's like, how is this team leading a division? I think a
yeah,
lot of it has to do with their competition in the NL East, but you can't discredit the fact that they have 80 plus wins. They're they're going to cruise to an NL East division title, and like I mentioned with Haversham, having that kind of X factor player, they might do some damage in the playoffs.
yeah.
So we'll
21
have to
and
see.
14 in one-run games.
They have that clutch factor.
Yeah,
That's I was thinking.
just
That's what I was thinking when you were talking. They have the clutch factor,
yeah,
and you can't discredit that when you get to the playoffs. That might be mirroring the real life Phillies this year. Like they just had that factor once they got to the playoffs.
very similar. Absolutely.
All right. So my number 7 is who you had down at the bottom. I've got the Mariners at number 7, and I kind of like how we were just talking about how the Phillies are a product of their division. I think the Mariners would have had a better record if they were anywhere but the NL West,
Mm,
or sorry, AL West. They are a very good team. A lot of scary hitters in that lineup. Their pitching got better this year with the addition of, who was it that they traded for from Kansas City? Um, Alejandro Rosario.
mm-hmm.
Um, Justin Fuller has put up a really good season for them pitching wise. They made the trade acquisition for Jordan Hicks at the back end of the bullpen to lock down games for them. And since he's come over, he's pitched a respectable 2.7 ERA with 1 save so far. But I think he's being used in more like a shutdown role, like a stopper kind of role.
Yeah,
So I think that the Mariners are going to be the team that snags that last wild card spot. They're playing really well. And one thing I haven't mentioned, and I was waiting until this point in the power rankings, which is why I have them up at number 7 instead of down where you had a number 10. Their last 6 games, they played Houston and Los Angeles, and they won 4 out of 6.
yep.
So you take 4 out of 6 from the 2 teams ahead of you in your division. That's a strong push right now, and hopefully they'll carry that momentum into the rest of the season. But that has to feel good when you play 6 straight games against the teams ahead of you in your division, and you win more than you lose.
Oh yeah, yeah.
So I think
This
that was
is
huge for
not
them.
just Serrano and Kelly anymore
No, it's not.
for Seattle. This is a fairly good team.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, and there isn't. I mean, and to be fair, from where you're at number 7 down to number 10, it's not much of a difference between any of these teams to
Sure.
me. So my number 7 team is kind of a maybe a bit of a surprise. It is the White Sox, and maybe it's
Oh
no
wow.
surprise.
Put the White Sox up here.
Um, they have they've had a strong run differential all year long, and it's a lot of the things I said about them when we were going through the playoff race. They fixed some of their early problems. They are still below 500 in one-run games, but they were atrocious at the beginning of the year, and they've pulled it up to almost even. Um, Different player every night seems to be hitting their stride. The bullpen has gotten it together, and with that defense, I they could also make a run into the playoffs. I don't see anybody, to be fair, surprising and making the AL championship series that's not in the top 3 or 4. But the White Sox have had a really good season, and I think that they're the 7th best team.
Now I'm gonna call you. I'm gonna say that's a homer pick because I don't even have the White Sox in my top 10.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
And honestly, it's their record. They
Yeah.
only have 75 wins right now, and um, I think in order to be one of the top 10 teams in baseball, you have to at least be close to the top 10 records in baseball. Um, I would have the White Sox and Indians right after the Dodgers in my number 11 spot. So
Okay.
it's not like they're too far out. I think I would put them a little bit ahead of the Brewers at this point because they are fighting for that division spot. I just think that there are teams that are playing better than them right now. Just my thing.
Okay. Fair enough.
So here you got it, number 6.
Number six. Number six, I have the defending American League champs, Baltimore Orioles. Um, a good season, a really good season from them. If you had said to me after Jim Reed went out last year in the playoffs that they would be back near the top of their division like they are, I would have, and especially getting rid of Connor Seabolt, I would have been like, oh, it's a rebuilding year. Um, just a really strong team. I make no bones about it. Buster Bluth is one of my favorite players in the eMLB. Uh,
I've been trying. I tried to like plant seeds of trying to get him to St. Louis. There's no way he's getting rid of him.
I don't think so. I really don't think so. Um,
Nah, not after you
and
locked him up to that contract.
yeah, and it's. I kind of feel about the East the way you're talking about the Central. I think while there is quality in that division, I think that division has kind of struggled up and down this year. It hasn't been as consistent. This isn't the team that the Baltimore Orioles were last year, but they
Hmm.
are still dangerous. They're dangerous like the Nationals were last year.
Yeah,
You can't. It doesn't look like it by the record, but they might be raising the trophy at the end of the season.
and you can't discredit what Ethan Knight's doing. He is still putting up pretty good
No.
numbers over there. Dan Walker, I would say, is the same
Oh yes.
type of X factor that you had Haversham over in Philadelphia. Both CCPs of their team owners, both of them coming in up late in the season, both of them coming up to the end to the Eastern Division leaders and trying to solidify that position for them at the top of the division. These are the X factors. Like Walker and Haversham are going to be those X factor players for these two teams down the stretch. And I think it was a great time to bring them up because they're ready in terms of their ability. And it's like one of those what do we have to lose kind of things. We're leading the division. We bring up a player with talent and just do whatever we can to solidify that spot in the top of the division.
Yeah. And he has been able to adjust. Frere falls apart. Some of the guys in the bullpen struggle, and then like a Bowden gets moved up to a stopper role. Um,
Mm-hmm.
Marjavicius is starting to convert some saves. It's it's like he's got a lot of weapons, and when you're getting up in this range, there's multiple ways that these teams beat you night in and
He's
night out.
I just realized this. He has 9 players that have a save on
Hmm.
in his pitching staff, and one of them is one of his current starters, Jorge Soto, the man without a role. He can't figure out if he wants to use him as a starter, a reliever, or a closer. But he's been a fairly effective at wherever he goes. He's not stellar by any means,
Right.
but he's been effective. He's
But he
been
was locked down in the playoffs last year.
yes, that's
Soto
true.
was. I mean, he was pitching 2 innings and I mean, he was just shortening games for Baltimore
He's
the
that
entire
pitcher
playoffs.
you can plug into any situation and he'll perform.
Yeah.
He's that Jack or Swiss Army knife type of pitcher. Just put him in any situation, and he'll he'll do the job.
Very much so. So who's your number
And
six?
all of that talk, I was kind of just echoing what you were saying because I
Oh,
have the same team there at number 6. So I don't even need to talk any further about that because we kind of just already discussed all that. I agree with everything you said. My number 5. This is where we get into the nitty gritty here.
yeah.
I'm putting the Giants here at number 5. Mostly because the 4 teams ahead of them are I think there's like a distinct difference between the top 4 and then the rest of the top 10, and I think the Giants just miss out on being that up on that top level. Mostly because their offense is holding them back. We kind of just we touched on it earlier. They have probably the best pitching staff in baseball, but their offense is not. If their offense was better, they would be up 1, 2, or 3 right now. But fact of the matter is unless their offense can start doing better than what they're doing now, which isn't horrible, but it's also not great. It's mediocre right now. If they can get to just a good level, they're going to be a scary team come playoff time.
Yeah, I have them at number 5 as well. I see them fixing some of their offensive problems. Where did Matt Toke come from?
Oh yeah, let's talk about him for a second. Like,
Shoo.
what?
It's like I looked at him and I said, "Oh, I'm going to have all kinds of fun with that last name," and then I'm like, "Oh, I need to be quiet. He is really producing.
He is hitting. Let's
231, 37 homers.
If it wasn't for his poor average, he would be hitting better than Michael Sean Kane. He's got more home runs than Kane.
Yeah.
But his average, he's one of those like Joey Gallo type players. He's like all or nothing. So that's why he's only hitting 231. But his slugging percentage is 510, even with that low batting average.
And it's that nice mix of left-handed power, right-handed power, right together in the lineup.
Yep.
So there's no 2 automatic outs, regardless of who's throwing against you. Danny Jansen coming in at the trade deadline.
That was also a really good trade for. Yeah, that was very good for them.
And I think that even though, and maybe it's because I know OOTP has always had this thing that when you start making adjustments on your team, sometimes you take a little bit of a hit performance-wise overall until it kind of like settles out. But I think those moves have have made him better and more dangerous long term. And basically when I was looking at this, starting with the Orioles, I would not be surprised to see any of these teams win the title.
Mm-hmm.
At the end of the year.
Okay, sounds good. So who do you got at number 4 then?
At number 4, I have the team just above San Francisco. I have the Padres.
Ooh, okay.
Really good team, and I'll be honest, the difference between 1 and 4 is about like
minuscule.
That for me. Yeah, it's the Padres have just been so dominant. Have just, like I said earlier, they keep winning 3 out of 5, 4 out of 6. They're just, you are not going to catch them in a slump.
Mm-hmm.
And just a really good team Steve has put together in San Diego. They're going to be hard to deal with in the playoffs, I think.
I definitely agree, but I have them actually higher than 4. I have the Angels at number 4 for my pick, and I agree with exactly what you said. Is that the top 4 teams are like that much apart from each other. Mm-hmm. I just think right now the thing that's holding the Angels back is actually their defense. They don't have a top of the line defense, and that actually speaks volumes to how well their pitching is performing. When you don't have the best defense backing you up, it means your pitchers are actually probably pitching better than what their numbers are. But I think that might be one of their undoings. They have a top offense. They have a really good bullpen. Their starting pitching is meh right now. I don't think I think they would probably have been hoping that Frank was pitching. Well, no, he's actually pitching pretty well for the Angels. This last sim, he jumped up his numbers a little bit. But I think it was a good move to add Frank, but I don't know. It's hard when you have to go up against Houston and the offensive juggernaut that is Houston. But I just think right now, and it's not a large difference at all. I just think they are just barely the 4th best team. But in 1 week, this could all flip and the Angels could be on top. That's how close it is.
Yeah, the numbers bear out what you were talking about because they're 3rd and 5th in the American League. So it is the defense that's kind of holding them back. But again,
when you say holding back, they have the 4th best record.
They're only going to win
100
games this year. Yeah, it's crazy. But they have the offense to counteract that.
They do. They do,
and the pitching is going
unlike
to
the
keep
Giants.
right. Where they may fumble away a runner or two here or there, but they're going to get it back.
I mean, they already have 3 players that have 40+ home runs in
Yeah,
Otani, Trout, and Ramos.
yeah,
All 3 of them have 40+ home runs and 100+ RBIs, and we still have 20 games left, 19, 20 games left.
yeah,
That's ridiculous.
yeah. And Barry Allen setting the table at 331.
That's why
I
they have 100 RBIs, because Barry
Yeah,
Allen's always getting on base.
yeah. It's crazy. Plus his 30 steals. I just and great defense in the outfield. Um, this is a
I'm
really
starting to
good team.
wonder, though. I know it's been kind of like Trout is our center fielder. He's always going to be our center fielder. I wonder how long it takes for them to decide to move Trout to a corner outfield spot and let Barry Allen take over in center. Because I think Allen has the better upside defensively in center, and that might be where they could improve. So I wonder how
When
long
I
they
was
stick with. It might be next season, but
Yeah,
is that going to cause an issue? His
it
defense.
really stood out to me yesterday on the game of the day
Mm-hmm.
to look at the outfield and it's blue. What's that yellow? Oh, okay,
Yeah.
Trout's an 11, and I'm like, huh. And so, and of course, I mean that's one thing. I mean the range is great and everything else. But to your point, Allen, especially with his speed and everything else, I mean, Trout's not losing a step. And I'm sure we could have this MVP argument, but
Mm-hmm.
you
Absolutely.
know, um, nice problem to have there
I think
in
it's just
in
going to be
LA.
like one of those natural progressions as a player ages, is that they're not going to be as nimble or have as much range as they used to have, and it might suit Trout better to move to a corner outfield position. It's actually why a couple seasons ago I approached the Angels about a trade for Joe Adell, because I saw him as an elite center field defensive player, but he was in right field because Trout was in center. So I was like, hey, let's see if I can get Adell and move him to center field where he will be a plus defender, and that's exactly what we got. And Barry Allen is looking like that same thing. They're putting him in right field, keeping Trout in center for, I don't know, what do you call it? Nostalgia, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah.
But as he gets older, you have to think he's going to move to corner outfield at some point.
And I mean, you see it in real life right now with him. And I mean, he's at his age 35 season in eMLB. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, the
That range
clock's
is going to
tick.
get smaller.
Yeah, the clock is definitely ticking on his defense. And I mean, and again, nice problem to have.
Yeah.
You know, hiding Trout in left field, but
Yeah. Oh, that's only the top left fielder or right fielder in the game, and
yeah,
Mike Trout. Yeah.
yeah,
All right. So at number 3, people are probably going to say that it's because I'm the rival of this team and I'm not putting them at 1 or 2, but I'm putting the Cubs here at number 3. And it's purely because the 2 teams I got left, I feel, are a more balanced team than the Cubs. You cannot discredit what the Cubs have been doing all season. They have been, they might be even a better offense than the Astros and the Red Sox. I'm just comparing National League ranks, so I don't
mhm,
know the exact numbers when you compare a National League team to an American League team. But I would think that they probably have a lot better They might have better stats than those 2 teams in the AL. It's just their pitch. Actually, I'm looking at this right now. It's not their pitching that's holding them back, as we keep talking about. It's their defense.
mm,
They have the number 4 FIP in the National League, but they have the 8th most runs allowed. It's because their defense is 10th in efficiency and 13th in zone rating in the National League. So their pitching is actually doing a lot better than a lot of, myself included. Like myself and JR were talking about the beginning of the season. They need to add a pitcher in order to become a complete team. They need to shore up their starting rotation. It turns out it might be their defense, and you can't blame Danny Smith Jr. because he's one of the most elite defensive center fielders we've ever
oh yeah,
seen. But like
best player in the
everywhere,
National League.
bet. Well, maybe Trey Griffey. I don't know. Trey Griffey got injured, so
Yeah. Well, I mean, yeah, Trey's in the conversation, but
that's true.
yeah, Trey.
But yeah, Danny, probably best position player in the National League. We can talk pitcher
Yep.
versus batter, maybe. But anyway,
Yeah.
Danny Smith Jr. is not a defensive liability by any means.
No.
He's the opposite of such. But the rest of the defense behind the pitching staff of the Cubs might be what's holding them back here. Now, holding them back again, we're talking about holding back. They're the tied for the best record in baseball right now. So I mean, come on.
Yeah, they're
I think
winning
they could.
eight to
I think
six instead of 8-5.
yeah,
Yeah,
fair enough. I think they're like, okay, we can live with this. And credit to Jake in Chicago. We like I said, JR and I kept saying Chicago needs to add a pitcher. Chicago needs to add a pitcher. They didn't really add a pitcher at the trade deadline because Jake saw it's not really my pitching that's an issue. Now maybe you could have addressed the defense a little bit, but are you going to sacrifice your offensive output for the sake of improving your defense? And in this
right,
case, I think he's like, I like my offensive output. My defense is going to be what my defense is. My pitching is doing enough to keep us in ball games and to let the offense take over. Now, I still have them at number 3 because the two teams ahead of them are more balanced. And that is purely why I have them at number 3. It's not because I don't think they're number 1 or number 2 best team in baseball. When it comes to playoff time, will that defense hurt them and cost them games?
right.
It's a possibility.
So true. Absolutely. And I've got a couple more things to say about the Cubs, but I will save that for when they show up on my ranking.
Ooh, so they are not at number 3.
They are not at number 3. The Angels are at number 3 for me.
Gotcha.
Um, Everything that you said about them, the power numbers from the team, the good pitching. I was looking at something. Let me get back to there real quick. Um, One of the things that really stood out to me for them was not on this screen. Uh, the fact that they are getting contributions from everywhere in the lineup. As much as we want to joke about Tomoya Mori and yeah, and I mean
$60 million
Andrelton's
man.
yeah, I mean Andrelton Simmons hitting 263. I That's gravy. Um,
Yeah, for sure.
they they to me have a really good mix of it's really good team building here.
Mm.
Um, they've got a bullpen by committee. It feels like Scott, Helsley, Dominguez. Um, they never seem to be out of any games. I mean, you look at the score and they very seldom blown out. The one, to your point, they were 11th in defensive efficiency. Um, and I think a lot of that comes from the corners as opposed to, the corners of the infield as opposed to up the middle.
Which
And
you're okay with, honestly,
oh yeah,
because you want your better defenders to be that up the middle, like
right,
catcher, shortstop, center field. So
yeah,
you can get away with less defense on the corners if it means you have a better offensive output, which is what they're getting.
exactly. And so very just a really solid team. And again, I wouldn't be surprised if they ended up with the trophy at the end of the season.
All right.
So now I'll mention those things about the Cubs
All right,
that
here we go.
I
Number 2.
mentioned it too. Um, I've already said it. I think Danny Smith Jr. is the best player in the National League, quite possibly the American League. I mean, in either league. You make a good point about the defense, but one of the things that really stands out to me is that it is an issue as far as range and not errors.
They're
Um,
just not getting the things.
right. But when they get to and Ken Urbeck is the poster child for that. He's 12 rated third baseman. He's got a 17 error rating. So it's like, if he gets to it, it's an out. And it almost feels like that was a choice for this team is like, maybe sacrifice the range and get a little more shorthandedness for the outs. I'm not really sure, but the fact that we're quibbling about the Cubs defense is probably a sign of just how good they are.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I'm hard pressed to see anybody else coming out of the National League other than the Cubs. Um, the Padres and Giants could certainly do it, but they are going to have to catch all kinds of fire to do it and just catch the Cubs napping, and I don't know how that's possible, quite frankly.
Well, that's interesting because you notice that I haven't put the Padres on my list yet.
Mm-hmm.
They're the only national team I don't have on there.
Mm-hmm.
But at number 2, I've actually got the Houston Astros.
Ooh.
So if that
Surprise.
gives you a hint at my number 1, but let me talk about the Astros first.
All right.
I think they're the best team in the American League right now. They have been the top team in the American League pretty much all season. However, their offense has fallen slightly, and that's not a fault of Seiya Suzuki since he's come over. He's
No.
tearing the he. I'm looking at his stats and like comparing them to Colorado and Houston. He's pretty much playing the exact same for Houston that he was for Colorado. He's hitting the exact same batting average at 274. He is hitting 1 point better slugging at 370 or on base percentage at 373, but he's actually slugging better in Houston than he is in Colorado. What? Who slugs better outside of Colorado?
I know, right?
Now, to be fair, it's only 38 games compared to 100 games with Colorado, but Seiya Suzuki was a fantastic ad by Houston at the deadline, and I will stand by that. And I'm not gonna sit here and say I wasn't jealous because I think I shared this on the last podcast with JR. I reached out to Colorado about Seiya early on in the season, and after I did so was when Colorado's GM put Seiya Suzuki. Hey, I'm listening to offers on Seiya Suzuki on the trade block, and I was like, dang it, I caused that. But their offense is still very scary. You have MVP candidate Grayson Rowan. You have Jordan Alvarez having a resurgent season after his re-rate, and you have Sammy Isla out there in center field, along with Seiya Suzuki. I think even though technically Boston and Chicago have better stats right now than Houston, I think Houston's lineup is the scariest in baseball.
Oh, yeah.
They just kind of have dropped off a little bit recently, but there was only a small stretch where the LA Angels were in front of them in the division, and they've taken that back and they're trying to extend it. Not only that, they have the fewest runs allowed as a pitching staff in the American League. And that is a fantastic feat when you have the fewest runs allowed and you have the third most runs scored in the American League. And that's why I have them at number 2. But the reason why I have the San Diego Padres up at number 1 is because they are second in the National League in runs allowed and second in the National League in runs scored. They have just a little bit more balance than Houston. And when you look at their lineup, it may not be as offensively powerhouse-ish as the Astros are, but you have a lineup that includes Fernando Tatis, Asher Kim, Yuna Kim, and Franmil Reyes. That is as scary, if not like maybe a half step below Houston in terms of the scariness factor, I'll call it. Just making up my own stuff right now. And then you look at their pitching staff, no one really jumps out to you in terms of, oh, this person is like top pitcher in the league, but all of them are pitching like all-stars. Like,
Yeah.
you look at Connor Seabold, who they got from Baltimore, as you mentioned earlier, like Baltimore giving up Seabold, you think they're rebuilding. And you have Mackenzie Gore and Bob Dowd all pitching extraordinarily well. Bob Dowd in particular has a 2.51 ERA right now.
Yeah, he's leading the National League in ERA.
That's right. He's leading the National League in ERA. And it's just, you look at this and it's like, whew, I think the Padres and the Astros are the two most balanced teams in baseball. And honestly, it's 1A and 1B for me. But I'm giving the slight edge to the Padres right now because I think they are playing a little bit better than the Astros, who as I mentioned earlier, the Mariners were able to take 2 out of 3 from Houston in this last sim. But it's very close because literally there's just a half game between the two of them.
Mm-hmm.
But I think, honestly, you mentioned you think it's going to be hard to beat the Cubs. I think the Padres are the team to do it. I'm thinking we're going to see a Padres Astros World Series.
Ooh. Well, you're half right. Houston is my number 1, obviously. No surprises
Yep.
there. For a lot of the reasons that you brought up, one that offense to me, everybody's OPS plus is, I think it's like 99 or above. I think Seth Beer is the only one who's at 70s, and he's only played like, you know, 30, 40 games. Just phenomenal. They're not going to cover off the ball. The pitching staff is phenomenal. You can argue about their defense, and at the same time, it's like it's just the way they're going through and they're playing, and they're just chewing up teams left and right. And the fact that they have been able to keep the Angels at bay the entire season, I don't see that changing come playoff time. Um, Grayson Rowan, another favorite player of mine, just phenomenal. It's like, I mean, he's the gold standard. Sorry, Aiden, but he's the gold standard for me behind the plate.
Ooh.
Um,
Ooh. Here's
just
why you're wrong. I want a rebuttal.
yeah. Oh, it's coming, I'm sure. Uh, and I mean, and that's not, looking down my nose at Aiden either. It's just
hmm
Rowan has just been phenomenal, and I look at these teams and how they are constructed, and it's like these teams make roster construction seem very easy until you actually go out and see what it takes to do that. And the thought process and the talent of these GMs up and down this top 10 is just phenomenal to me. And while I think the Cubs are going to, and I really think it's going to come down to the Dannies. The Dannies are on fire right now, and I think they will some. I think that the NLCS is going to be 7 games, and I think it's going to be close, and I think every game is going to be a slugfest. Um, the American League, maybe not so much. Um, I, it's going to be a great playoffs, as good as last year was and the year before. I just think this year we are in for quite a run, playoff wise.
You know what's gonna stink though is the fact that whoever wins the American League West, and actually the National League West for that matter, is gonna have to play the winner of the wild card. So we're the division series. You are looking at a possible two battles of the Western Division teams, where you have Houston versus LA on one side and San Diego versus San Francisco on the other side. And honestly, that's kind of a shame that we don't have that matchup in the championship series, because I would much rather see that in the championship series than the division series.
Sure. Oh, absolutely. But that's the to me, and I tend to be a traditionalist. I don't like 12 teams in the playoffs and things like that. That's not my bag,
Well, next year you're not gonna.
and
Well,
that's fine.
but we're expanding next year, so there's a reason for it.
Well, exactly. I mean, with I guess the fact that you're playing 162 games, I really think that's where the teams kind of separate. And to me, I mean, I've run saves where I didn't even have playoffs. It was all about the regular season, like
Mm,
like Premier League soccer or something like that,
like
because
round robin style.
that's where I love the give and take and the team that does it over the long haul. But
Do you do 3 points for a win and 1 point for an extra inning loss?
no, never do that again. No, no. But I
Just
but
teasing.
I but I am thinking about doing a league that has relegation, and I
Oh, that
love
would be
that kind
fun.
of, yeah. Those are exciting to me. But
You have to have a smaller major league. I think if you want to do something like that,
yeah,
to not
well,
spread the
and you
talent
have
out
to
so
have
much.
a deeper talent pool just in
Yeah.
general to make that work. But that's a side point.
What I'm gonna keep going off a side point.
Okay.
Earlier, when I was still doing my streaming and YouTube days, I started everyone was going on this kick of going back and playing the old college football NCAA 14,
Mm-hmm.
and
Still do.
I there you go. I actually did relegation style college football where I had the Power Five conferences each paired with one of the non-Power Five conferences, and the last place team of the Power Five was relegated, and the champion of the lower five was promoted. I didn't
Oh, I
really
love
get
that.
very far, but I love the idea of it. It was really cool.
I
So,
love that too. I play a bunch of different sports replay and board games, and it's just playing the different type of like I've done I've got an all time NCAA basketball tournament that's double
ooh,
elimination, and I did it to make it more fun for me because you've got these great teams of the past, and I mean as good as the teams are today, you're not going to be able to compete with them statistically. The
mm,
Kareem UCLA teams and even the Bill Walton UCLA teams, they're just so dominant, and so I've got to find a way to you know make it at least a little interesting.
yeah, that sounds really
So
cool.
yeah,
Anyway, we're getting way off track here, but
yeah,
hey, we're talking sports. We're having a good time, right?
yeah. I'm not
Um,
addicted at all.
not maybe a little bit.
No,
All right. Well, there you have it. There are our power rankings as of 19-20 games left in the regular season. This is probably the last power rankings you'll see from the insider, unless we do like a special right before the end of the season. So the next power rankings, we will rank only the 10 playoff teams like we did last year, where we took the 10 playoff teams and just put them on a scale of 1 to 10. And that's where we had some controversy during those because I don't know if you remember, we did a crossover with Here's Why You're Wrong.
yes,
And there was some I think the biggest one was where JR put Kansas City at number 6 or
yeah.
something like that, 6 or 7. Um,
That was a
no
fun
offense,
episode.
no offense to Kansas City, but they did not match up well with LA that year.
No,
Or no, was
it
that
was
LA?
hard
No,
to.
no, no, that was Baltimore. Sorry, that was Baltimore. No, no, Baltimore was the top seed. It was LA.
Yeah,
They did play
yeah. I
LA.
thought it was LA. Yeah,
Yeah. Anyway, well, there
yeah.
you have it. It'll be very interesting to see where all of these teams end up once we hit the playoffs. It's going to be some. I know I said it so much last year. September is exciting baseball, and especially when all of the American League divisions are up for grabs and you have a really close 3 team race for the second wild card spot in the National League. There's going to be a lot of exciting baseball down the stretch. I want to once again thank you, Tim, for coming on last second and
Thank
filling
you
in
for
for
having me.
JR. We definitely enjoyed having you, and hopefully we'll see you again on either the Insider or Here's Why You're Wrong, or maybe you start your own CCP podcast. I don't know. No, I'm not putting that pressure on you. I'm
No,
not
no,
gonna.
no, no.
No,
And hey, don't forget Ahead of the Curve.
I was about to say
Those guys are
Denbrew and
awesome.
Sadier are doing a great job highlighting the CCPs across the minor leagues. We definitely thank them for starting. They did that all on their own. They came to me with like, "Hey, they literally came to me, hey, we recorded this. Can you put it on the YouTube?" I'm like, "Oh, this is cool." So,
Yeah, they
thank
are
you once
amazing.
again for everyone who is making content, whether you're making podcasts, whether you're writing articles for your team, or you are a CCP writing articles about your player. There's some fantastic articles written about their own CCPs that you should join the Discord, which is also in the link in the description. Join that, see all of the stories across all of eMLB action.
And
And
if you want to find out what happens at the CCP festival in the
ooh,
off season,
ah,
please join the Discord. It's going
ooh,
to be
that's
a
a
lot
big
of fun.
tease.
Yes, it's going to be a lot
Ooh,
of fun. I will say it's going to be a 6-team tournament of
ooh,
all CCPs. Everybody in the list that's on the Discord, the new
oh,
CCPs. So some of the older
this will be
CCPs won't be
exciting.
there, and we'll have
Ah,
fun competitions like who throws the fastest pitch and
ooh.
who's the fastest runner,
Are we
and
gonna have a home run derby?
uh, of course
Of course.
that's the only way we could get Danny Smith Jr. to bring the Oregon water so that nobody
There you
gets
go.
hurt.
Yeah, there you go.
It's gonna
Now
be a
is
lot of fun.
here's here's a question that I probably should ask you off camera, but I'm going to ask you on camera in
Okay.
this episode. Is this something that we could turn into YouTube content instead of just happening in the Discord? Well,
Potentially, I'd have to think about it because it's
we'll have to talk about it.
yeah, yeah.
Ooh,
I'd be up for that.
potentially more exciting content coming to the YouTube. No promises right now, obviously, because I literally just asked him spur of the moment.
Okay,
This was not
exactly.
planned out at all.
No,
So,
I'm
but
still figuring
if
out a couple of the competitions. In fact, so
there you go. But regardless, if you don't want to miss anything, you need to make sure you join the Discord because that is where everything happens, as well as follow Commission's Twitch channel if you haven't done so already. And if you haven't gotten a CCP into the universe, and if you don't know what that stands for, Community Created Player, anyone can make it, whether you're a GM of a team or just someone who just watches the channel and enjoys hanging out in our community. Do it. There's nothing to lose from it. It's a lot of fun. We have you have the list. How many CCPs do you have on your list of participating people?
There were 150 that
There
were
you go.
in the Discord list, and there's I think another 30, 35 more that I wanted to, but maybe next year we'll do it.
There you
So
go. So almost
Sharpie said he
around
had the
around
space for
200
yeah.
players created by members of our community. So please get in on that. But as we wrapped up this here, thank you guys so much for watching, and get ready for some end of season action over on Commission's Twitch channel. Tune in for the games of the night where we will be highlighting matchups that have playoff implications. Hopefully, depends on people's availability. But until next time, guys, thank you guys so much for watching, and we'll see you on the next one.
Thank you. Bye.